Hey everyone, hope you're doing wonderful today. As promised, I told you that I will be doing my husband's grandmother's 5-day pickle recipe, and we have enough cucumbers now that we can get that process started. As you can see here, there's all of our cucumbers and some of our peppers that we had and some more zucchini over here. So we are going to start that process. You're going to need for this recipe, it's an old-fashioned sweet pickle recipe. So you're going to need approximately 4 pounds of cucumbers. I believe that I have that, maybe even more, so I'll just add more if I need to of the brine. So you're also going to need a 5-gallon bucket with a tight-fitting lid. This here is a bucket I got actually from one of the big box stores. They had their buttercream chocolate frosting in it. So they gave it to me. They never charged me for it. They're throwing them away, recycling them. So this is a way that I can repurpose them. And anytime I ask if they have them, they're happy to give them to me. So I brought them home, and my husband was so kind that he washed it out really good a few times, and it has air dried, and again, it's food safe, so it's perfect for the pickle recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and start cleaning these cucumbers and prepping them for the first day. Okay, so I have my cucumbers in here, and I have my vegetable brush that I can use, and I'm just going to scrub them under the cold water. Get them nice and clean, dirt and bud free. So I went ahead and got the cucumbers all cleaned. And over here on the stove, you will see that I have a pot of water that's getting hot. Now, you don't have to boil your water. I'm just going to get it nice enough that it's hot so that when I add the salt, it will help dissolve easier. So we're going to come on over here and get our cucumber out. You're going to look at the side that has the stem side. Then you're going to take the opposite side and take about 1/4 to 1/2 inch off. That's the blossom side. That way you're going to discard this, and that way when you cut your cucumbers, you're not adding that and it won't get soggy on you. So at this point is where we're going to take our pickles or our cucumbers and cut them to your desired. You can spear them. You can, if they're small, you can leave them whole. These are obviously not smaller ones, so I'm going to cut them all about like this. I want them to have a little thickness to them. That helps with keeping some of the crunch. With these sweet pickles, crunch isn't really necessary, but I do like to have a little bit. So I'm going to continue cutting all of these up, and I do have 8 pounds of cucumbers, so I'm going to go ahead and double this recipe just to make sure that I have enough brine for all of them. I'll bring you back as soon as we're done cutting all the cucumbers up. I was able to get all of the cucumbers cut up, and I'll show you in here. That's a lot of pickles in the making. So as I talked about earlier, I have the water staying hot over here. I'm going to move the pickles to my working station. And the next thing that we're going to need is 1/3 cup for 4 pounds. Now I'm making 8 pounds, so I'm going to use 2/3 cups of salt. I use the Mrs. Wages pickling and canning salt. You do not want to use the iodine kind of salt for canning purposes. You can also use the pink Himalayan salt, which I've used before, but I've just had the pickling and canning salt sitting here, so I thought we'd go ahead and use that. Okay, let's see if I can set you up here. So I got the 1/3 cup here of the pickling salt. I'm just going to pour that directly over the cucumbers. Get the second one in here to make my 2/3, because I said I am doubling this recipe. And there we have 2/3 cup of salt. And I'm going to just mix the salt in with the cucumbers so I can get down there and coat them very well. And as you can see, the salt is already starting to dissolve. Then I'm going to, sorry friend, then I'm going to come over and get the hot water that I have on the stove. And the hot water is just going to be enough just to cover the cucumbers. Alright, so I did not have to use all the water. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough in there. And I'm going to just stir these up and make sure that it doesn't need more water. And I think I may just put a little bit more because some of the cucumbers are still on top here. Yep, that looks good. And that concludes our day 1 of the 5-day pickles, the sweet pickles. You're going to take your lid and put it on top and press it down nice and snug, and then cover a towel over it. And then we'll continue when we come back with day 2. I'm sorry, almost forgot. I wanted to show you what I do to weight the cucumbers down into the brine, saltwater brine, to keep them all submerged. So what I do is I put a plate down here, then I filled up a regular mason jar or something that's heavy enough to hold that plate down, and it keeps the cucumbers submerged underneath that saltwater brine. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and cover this and put a towel over it, and we're going to let it sit until tomorrow. Usually about 24 hours is best, and then we'll go ahead and continue then with day number 2. Thanks again. See you soon. Alright, day 2. I have the 5-gallon bucket that I'm getting ready to put up here on the counter. this lid out of my way. And you'll hear Carmen running around. It's her little happy hour. She's like playing and things. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the weighted jar that I used. And the plate. And the next step is to drain and rinse the pickles. So I'm going to be pouring them into the colander so that it can start draining. Set you down here. Colander's down there. So slowly pour that out. Whoa, there's a lot of pickles. Okay. Don't want to lose my pickles here. We got some more still left in the bucket. I may have to do a separate batch of that, so I'll go ahead and get a bowl. Alright, so at this point you got your cucumbers here that have been soaking in the salt water brine overnight. You're going to turn on the cool water, and you're going to want to make sure you get all of the salt that they've been sitting in off. Then I'm just going to put it in a separate bowl here, and then I'll add more as I go down. So you don't have to do one at a time or anything like that. I was just showing you to try to get all the salt that you can off. You do not want your sweet pickles to be salty. So I'm going to continue doing this until I get them all rinsed off good and free of that salt water brine. Alright, so I had already rinsed all the cucumbers and I put them back in the bucket here. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with fresh water, only water, and let them sit for a little bit, and then I will re-drain them and I will refill them up again with fresh water. I'm going to let them soak for about 30 minutes in the fresh water before I drain them, and then when I refill them I'll do the same thing, let them sit in the fresh water for another 30 minutes, and then I'll see how they are. If they don't look or taste salty to me, then we'll continue. If not, then I'll do it a third time if need be. Alright, so we are finally done rinsing our cucumbers. And y'all, I told you that usually it takes about 3 rinses. These cucumbers really absorb that salt because it took me 7 rinses. But it is now palatable. You still taste the salt, just a mild taste, but it's very palatable. It's not overwhelming like it was the first rinses that I was doing. So what we're going to do now is start getting our brine together. And since you know that I did double this recipe, it calls for 1 quart of vinegar, but I'm going to be using 2. And it's just a regular white distilled vinegar. Go ahead and pour this in there. This here is a 1/2 quart, and I'll be putting it in my saucepan. So I'll be putting 4 of these in there. That would be for 2 quarts since I'm doubling with the 8 pounds of cucumbers. Alright, then the next thing after we put the 2 quarts of the white distilled vinegar in here, we're going to need It calls for, let's see, it calls for 1 cup of sugar, so I'm doubling it, so I'm going to put 2 cups of sugar in here. Set you down. Pour it in there. So now that we've done that, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and turn this on to a medium heat. And I'll be stirring that to help the sugar dissolve. And then we will move on over here to our counter. Move this out of the way. And at this point, you're going to need cheesecloth so that you can put your pickling spices and all that wonderful stuff in this. And I'm just going to use, this is all one solid sheet. So I'm just going to separate it here and then cut a section out, square block, about a 12 by 12, but I'm going to double it up, so I'm just going to go clear across. And fold it over. Fold it, well, you know, maybe I should just cut this in half and fold it over, so that's what I'll do, because that was a little longer than what I expected. There we go. Separate that there. And just kind of fold it over like that and lay it flat. I'm going to go ahead and put this out of the way and then we'll move on. At this point is when you are going to add your mustard seed, and you're going to need 2 tablespoons of mustard seed for 8 pounds of cucumbers. Just going to put the tablespoons right in the center of the cloth. So we went ahead and added the 2nd tablespoon of mustard seed, and at this point you're going to go twist it, and then I will grab a tie here. This is a plastic one, so it's not like the ones you get in the store that when you get wet it comes apart. That's what it'll look like. Then you will take it over to your vinegar and sugar mixture and just drop it in. And that will start absorbing the spices, and you're going to let that seep for about 30 minutes up to an hour. I have it on medium. As long as it's not boiling, it should be fine. If it starts boiling, just turn it back down to like a medium low. And then after this, we will go ahead and be pouring it over our cucumbers. Alright, so at this point, good and hot. Color's changed a little bit. When I pour this in, I will also take the Pickling Spice Brine little cheesecloth bag that I made and keep it in there, and it'll continue seeping as it's hot. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it off of the burner and put that in the bucket over the cucumbers. And just over here, a little bowl to put the seeps in. And we're just going to pour this directly over the cucumbers. And then go ahead and take this, put it in there. Alright, so I have it down there covering the cucumbers. Remember my little trick with the weight? We're going to do that again. I have the plate. And I don't know how that happened, but we're going to go ahead and rinse that off. There we go. I'm going to put the plate down in here. Then we're going to fill up our mason jar. Add some more weighted support. And just put that on top of the plate. And down in there, that will hold the cucumbers underneath the brine. So turn this water off. What we do now is just cover. Make sure that it's snapped and airtight. Alright, and now we have this sitting for another 24 hours. And then tomorrow I'll come back. We will be adding another cup of sugar. And at this point, we add a cup of sugar a day for 5 days. So some people would say, well, that's a 7-day recipe. Technically, if you count the 2 preparation days, yes, it could be a 7-day pickle recipe, sweet pickle recipe. But they're counting the actual processing and settling and absorbing all of the wonderful flavors that we just put in there. So starting today, we have started the process. So for the next 5 days, each day we're going to add 1 cup of sugar. And I'll show you that before we can it up. Alright, so we have been working on a 5-day pickle recipe. In the first section of the video, you'll see me doing day 1, day 2. Those were the 2 days for preparation. So, as we were saying before, the next 5 days, it's just simply adding sugar and stirring. So, every day since Monday, This is Saturday. Since Monday, I've been adding 2 cups of sugar up till yesterday, which was Friday. And today is canning day. So, I went ahead and got the pickles out. Let me open these up here. And take out my plate weight. Put them in the sink. And we'll take you down here so you can see how these look. So I'm going to go ahead and get my wooden little spatula I've been using and stir this up once more. And today we're going to be what they call basically like a cold pack canning. Most generally when I water bath can, I sterilize the jar and the jars in the hot water. The lids are hot. The water's hot. The stuff that I'm putting inside the jar is hot. And that's the hot water bathing. And the cold water bathing, basically, because these pickles have been pretty much fermenting for the last week, we do not need to add more heat to them and get them even more mushy. We don't want them mushy. They're not going to be a crispy pickle, because that's not what this recipe is for. They're going to have a little crunch to them. They still do. But you don't want to add hot brine on top of those again. So I went ahead and washed my jars and got the lids and everything prepared. In our water bath, we just have temperature room water. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and start packing the cucumbers in those jars until I can get them completely full. Then we'll take the brine that's already in here and pour into our jar up to 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to go ahead and get that process started, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I went ahead and got my first pickles out here and draining down, and I'm just going to start packing them into the jar. So bring you over here, and we have our jars ready. Right now I'm just starting out with 7. We could always wash up some more. 5 of them are just the regular, and then I have some cute little fancy ones for maybe the last end batches. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And let me grab my things here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and bring my bucket up. And we're going to go ahead and start putting the cucumbers in our jar. Bring you down here so you can see. And you're going to put these in and pack them as tightly as possible so that they don't float. If they do float up a little bit, that's not going to hurt anything. Most generally though, you just want to make sure that we can get them packed in there so you can get as many cucumbers as you possibly can in each jar. I don't want to push it too hard because I don't want to damage the cucumbers. I do want to try to keep it below the rim here. And I think that's probably about all we're going to get in there. I'm going to go ahead and finish filling up the rest of these jars, and then we'll move on to the brine. So I went ahead and got all the pickles in the jars, and altogether we had 2, 4, 6 of these jars, actually 7. One of them I went ahead and put in the refrigerator because they're not going to wait for processing. My husband will want to enjoy those immediately. So that left me with 6 of these left and 2 of these. We are going to now start pouring the brine into the jars up to the 4th inch mark. So I just got my little handy dandy measuring cup here, and I will pour it in there. And at this point, you think that you're at the 4th, so you can just move on. Well, that's not technically correct because there would be air bubbles. So you want to take your debubbler, kind of go around the sides of the jars the best you can. Get those bubbles out. That will also cause your liquid to go further down in between your cucumbers, so that you will know if you need to add any more brine, which in this case we just need a little bit more. Not a lot. And then we can just move this on over to the next one once we're there. Now this is a very important part that you do not want to forget. Is you're going to need your white distilled vinegar that I have in this little cup right here, because this is a sugary mixture. So this is probably going to have sugar on top of it, which could cause it not to seal. So I'm going to take a nice clean dishcloth, cheesecloth, whatever you have. We're going to wipe the rims really good. Make sure we get all that sugary brine off of there. And at this point, you'll go ahead and take your canning lid, put it on there, and just finger tight. Remember, we never use our wrist, just finger tight. Another way you can do it is like this. Once it starts turning, it's tight enough. And we'll move over here and place it in the jar, in the canner I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and continue doing this and get all of these finished up and get them in the canner. Here we got all of our jars in our canner, and at this point we're going to go ahead and just turn it on, and we're going to turn it on to a medium-high heat and let that come up to a slow boil. Because I cold packed the water, cold packed the jars, and the lids are cold packed, we want to bring it up slowly. Then once it starts doing the rolling boil that we always look for when we are hot jar canning, then we start the timer for 10 minutes. So our water has come up to a full rolling boil. I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for 10 minutes. And once that is done, I will turn the burner off and wait 5 minutes. And then I will vent the lid or take the lid off completely, either way, and wait another 5 minutes before lifting the jars up. That way you don't get too much of a temperature change. You don't want your jars to break. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to wait on this 10 minutes and then get those jars out. And there you have it. All processed and waiting for them to ping. Won't take long. Alright everyone, thank you for joining me, and I hope that you learned a lot, and I will make sure that we put the recipe for Grant's grandmother's sweet pickles in the description box so you can make your own. I'm telling you what, they are delicious and definitely addicting. So before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and as always, share, share, share. Have a great day.